Today, at the expanded meeting of the Ministry of Defense Board, we will discuss the key results of our work in 2024. We will set tasks to strengthen our defense capabilities. We will outline the further development of the armed forces. Let me start by noting that this year has been pivotal in achieving the objectives of the special military operation. Thanks to the professionalism and bravery of our soldiers, the heroic efforts of defense industry workers, and the truly nationwide support for our Army and Navy, Russian forces firmly hold the strategic initiative along the entire line of engagement. This year alone, 189 settlements have been liberated. I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our heroes, the soldiers and officers who fight selflessly and steadfastly on the front lines, the personnel of the Ministry of Defense, the National Guard, our special services, and other security agencies who fulfill all assigned tasks with precision, no matter how challenging, sparing neither themselves nor their lives for victory and for the fatherland. It is our duty to always remember our comrades who fell defending the homeland and our people. We must provide constant care for their families and children. I have said this many times, and I will say it again. Their children are our children. We must never forget this. Let us honor the memory of our fallen comrades with a moment of silence.
Спасибо.
Dear members of the board, the current military political situation in the world remains difficult and unstable. The bloodshed in the Middle East continues, and the potential for conflict remains high in several other regions. We see that the current U.S. administration, along with almost the entire collective West, continues to attempt to preserve its global dominance. They try to impose their so-called rules on the international community, constantly changing these rules to suit their needs. In fact, there is only one stable rule. There are no rules for those who impose them. For those who consider themselves at the head of the world, who believe they are representatives of God on earth, even though they themselves do not believe in God. And against disobedient states, they wage hybrid wars, implement a policy of containment, including against Russia. In an attempt to weaken our country and deliver a strategic defeat, the U.S. continues to flood the illegitimate ruling regime in Kyiv with weapons and money. They send mercenaries and military advisors, thus encouraging further escalation of the conflict. At the same time, under the pretext of a mythical Russian threat, they frighten their own population by claiming that we are planning to attack someone. Their tactic is very simple. They push us to the red line, beyond which we can no longer retreat. When we start responding, they immediately scare their population with the threat of Soviet and now Russian aggression. Meanwhile, NATO countries are increasing military spending. Strike groups of NATO troops are being formed near Russian borders. The number of U.S. military personnel in Europe has already exceeded 100,000. NATO's ambitions have long since gone beyond the so-called zone of its historical responsibility. Besides the so-called Eastern Flank, NATO is increasing its presence in the Asia-Pacific region. New military political alliances are being formed under U.S. leadership, undermining the security architecture that has been in place for decades. We are also deeply concerned about U.S. efforts to create and prepare to deploy advanced precision strike ground-based weapons with a range of up to 5,500 kilometers. These missile systems are already being prepared for deployment in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. Let me remind you that such measures were previously prohibited by the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces (INF) Treaty, which the U.S. withdrew from. We have repeatedly stated that the termination of this treaty would have negative consequences for global security. But we emphasized that we would not deploy intermediate-range missiles until American weapons of this kind appear in any region of the world. Russia has made these commitments unilaterally. But as I have already said, if the U.S. begins deploying such systems, all our voluntary restrictions will be lifted. Given the increasing geopolitical tension, we are forced to take additional measures to ensure the security of Russia and our allies. We do this carefully and judiciously, avoiding a full-scale arms race that would harm the social and economic development of our country. We are paying close attention to the improvement of the combat composition of the armed forces and the enhancement of their capabilities. As part of these efforts, the Leningrad and Moscow military districts have been formed, along with several new units and formations. The personnel of the armed forces has been increased to 1.5 million soldiers. The re-equipping of the Army and Navy with modern weaponry and technology is proceeding at an accelerated pace. For example, the share of such weapons in the strategic nuclear forces has already reached 95%. At the same time, we have clarified the basic principles of nuclear weapon use, which are outlined in the updated fundamentals of state policy in the field of nuclear deterrence. I want to emphasize once again, so that no one accuses us of rattling nuclear weapons. This is nuclear deterrence policy. Along with the nuclear triad, high-tempo developments are taking place in the general-purpose forces. Advanced robotic systems, including those using artificial intelligence technologies, are being deployed in the military. These include reconnaissance and strike drones, unmanned boats, and multi-purpose robotic platforms. It is now crucial to continue the steady and systematic development of the Army and Navy to achieve the goals of the special military operation and to be ready for an operational and effective response to potential security challenges to our country. At the same time, we must focus on solving the following priority tasks. First, undoubtedly, one of the key instruments for maintaining stability, protecting Russia's sovereignty and territorial integrity remains our strategic nuclear forces. We will continue to support their potential and balanced development, working on the creation of new deterrent systems and complexes. Alongside this, it is crucial to maintain non-strategic nuclear forces in constant combat readiness and continue conducting exercises to practice their application. Second, I have already spoken today about the risks associated with the deployment of U.S. intermediate-range missiles in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. We will respond comprehensively to such threats. A key task will be to ensure the timely detection of missile launches and their interception. At the same time, we must fine-tune all issues related to the serial production and deployment of domestic strike systems, including hypersonic ones. As you know, Russia's newest powerful weapon is the medium-range missile complex, Oreshnik. In November, in response to strikes on our territory using Western weapons, it was successfully deployed with a ballistic missile in a non-nuclear hypersonic configuration. In the near future, serial production of these systems will be ensured to protect the security of Russia and our allies. And this will certainly be done. Third, we need to more actively incorporate the experience gained in the course of the special military operation into the combat training of the troops, as well as into the programs of higher military educational institutions. At the same time, we should improve the methods of conducting military operations, update fundamental doctrinal documents, increase proficiency in weapons and equipment, and enhance the effectiveness of military command, especially at the tactical and operational tactical levels. Once again, I emphasize, talented officers and sergeants who have demonstrated their skills in a difficult combat environment should become the foundation of the Armed Forces command staff and also serve as instructors in military educational institutions. Fourth, the experience gained from the special military operation must be fully considered when determining priority areas for the development of domestic weapons, military equipment, and their tactics. For example, new methods of missile guidance on the terminal flight phase have been developed for high-precision weapons, which have allowed them to be successfully used against complex and fortified targets. The anti-jamming capabilities of missile weaponry onboard systems have been significantly improved, and new methods for flight mission execution have been developed. In the future, it is essential to calculate these missions in real time for operationally identified targets, a crucial task for our defense industry. I will speak more on this later. Another important innovation has been the direct exchange of information between the units directly involved in the special operation and defense industry organizations, something I just mentioned. As a result, the average time to resolve identified defects for some products now takes 5 to 7 days. But this is not enough. We need to speed up further. There have been positive shifts in organizing the repair and upgrading of equipment according to combat requirements. However, problems remain, and they must be addressed sequentially. We must continue to do everything necessary to accelerate the implementation of advanced technologies and other innovations in the military field. Fifth, to reduce decision-making time when managing units on the battlefield, a joint interdepartmental information exchange system based on mobile devices has been created and proven to be effective. Over 6,500 such systems have already been delivered to the troops. As a result of their use, the time to set tasks has been reduced by 1.5 to 2 times. Now, with the introduction of advanced developments from the defense industry, it is necessary to quickly create a unified information framework that connects reconnaissance and strike systems at the strategic, operational, and tactical levels of command. Sixth, the production of robotic complexes and unmanned systems of various classes and types must be increased. At the beginning of the special operation, we faced problems in this area. Some samples were expensive and complex to operate. Today, thousands of different purpose drones are supplied to the troops every day. We must continue to improve their combat and operational characteristics. It is equally important to train the operators of these systems, preparing them with programs developed based on real combat experience. Seventh, we must continue to expand military and military technical cooperation with allies and partners, with those who are ready and willing to work with us, which is the majority of countries in the world. Dear colleagues, I have already mentioned today the tremendous support from Russian society for the Army and the Navy. People understand what we are fighting for, what we are protecting, help the frontline soldiers, and even join their ranks. This is an extremely important reflection of the state of our society. I will give a figure. This year, on average, more than 1,000